Today is a day that reaches far beyond that which we're celebrating here today. Today, Pearl Harbor Day, marks the 75th anniversary of that which President Roosevelt so famously referred to as a day that will live in infamy. 75 years ago today, the Empire of Japan attacked the United States without warning or provocation. 75 years ago today, we lost 2,400 of our fellow citizens, with another 1,178 having been injured in that terrible attack. But the attack of Pearl Harbor had many poignant significances, none the least of which brought the United States into World War II, and in turn gave rise to our country as a superpower and a leader amongst nations. Moreover, the lessons learned from both the war as well as the attack of Pearl Harbor forever changed our defense posture, which is reflected in the creation of the former George Air Force Base and the F-4 Phantom that we're here to consider today. That said, please rise as we present the colors of the United States of America and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
March. Roundabout. March. Group. Hold. Present. Colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roundabout. March. Forward. March.
Let me introduce to you Keith Metzler. He's our Assistant City Manager as well as the Assistant Executive Director of the SCLA Airport.
Good morning, and thank you for actually very impressed with the turnout. Certainly didn't expect this great of a turnout, so I'm glad to see you all, and I wanted to thank you in advance for actually being a part of this ceremony. This ceremony is very important to us at the airport because it actually helps create a symbol of our recognition of the history, but also this great aircraft that's been on loan to us from the Air Force Museum. And so with that, my plan is to share with you a little bit of history about George Air Force Base, actually doing the public unveiling, telling you a little bit about this fine aircraft when it was in service, and then of course sharing some closing remarks. Along the way we'll also have some certificates. But with that, I'm just going to start with the history about George Air Force Base, and many of you know, I'm sure, but for those of you that don't, the Victorville, George Air Force Base was actually Victorville Army Airfield, and it was originally activated on October 1st, 1941, with flight operations beginning shortly thereafter. Amazingly, in just 6 short months, one run and 221 buildings were constructed. We can't get through an environmental today in that period of time. When George started in support of World War II, 11,164 pilots and bombardiers were trained between 1941 and 1945. When George started in support of World War II, 11,164 pilots and bombardiers operated here. After World War II, the Army Air Force shut down the facility only to reopen as George Air Force Base in 1950. From 1950 to 1992, George Air Force Base served as a fighter-bomber training base, a West Coast air defense base, and a part of the Tactical Air Command. Based aircraft included, among others, the supersonic F-104 and the F-4 Phantom. George Air Force Base served as a support to foreign conflicts, including the Korean War and the Vietnam War. Its last publicly known mission was combat and reconnaissance missions for Desert Storm, or Operations Desert Storm, and Operation Desert Shield. The George Air Force Base's all-Phantom force flew 4,254 combat missions and fired over 900 missiles at Iraqi targets. Now, as a fine symbol to remind us of our proud history while transitioning into a more commercial enterprise, we unveil this mounted F-4 sitting behind me, now located at the front entrance of our main airport office. That's a fairly intimidating looking aircraft. It was an aircraft originally produced by McDonnell Douglas and is a tandem two-seat twin-engine all-weather long-range supersonic jet interceptor and fighter bomber aircraft originally developed for the United States Navy. Actually, I almost felt like a salesperson there trying to sell this aircraft to you. It first entered service in 1960 with the U.S. Navy. Proving highly adaptable, it was also adopted by the U.S. Marine Corps and the U.S. Air Force, and by the mid-1960s had become a major part of their respective air wings. The Phantom is a large fighter with a top speed of over Mach 2, which is approximately 1,485 miles per hour, and can carry more than 18,000 pounds of weapons. Beginning in 1959, it set 15 world records for in-flight performance, including speed record of 1,606 miles per hour and an altitude record of 90,000 feet in the air. During the Vietnam conflict, the F-4 was used extensively. It served as the principal air fighter for both the Navy and the Air Force, and later became important in the ground attack and aerial reconnaissance roles. The Phantom has the distinction of being the last U.S. aircraft flown to attain ACE status in the 20th century. The F-4 Phantom II remained in use by the U.S. in the reconnaissance and wild weasels role in the 1991 Gulf War, finally exiting service in 1996. The F-4 was also, believe it or not, the only aircraft used by both U.S. flight demonstration teams, the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds and the U.S. Navy Blue Angels. The F-4 was also operated by armed forces of 11 other nations and currently remains in frontline service for 7 countries around the world. This is an amazing aircraft, and we're pleased to have it welcome you to SCLA. So with that, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our mayor and chairman of the airport board, Ms. Gloria Garcia, to introduce a number of volunteers that helped bring this event and bring this monument to life.
Thank you, Mr. Messler. I really got an education in just a few seconds. Good morning, everyone. And thank God for such a beautiful, wonderful day. I know it's a little bit chilly, but it could be worse. And we know that. On behalf of the entire City Council, I'd like to extend our congratulations to the extremely dedicated volunteers and SCLA employees who participated in the restoration of this F-4C. You did an excellent job. It is a beauty. Thank you for your efforts to preserve this important part of Victorville's history. This F-4 is much more than an aircraft. It's a visible reminder of the impact George Air Force Base had on the Victor Valley. Because so many of us have connections to George, either through personal service or the service of our family members, seeing this F-4 displayed, I'm having a hard time seeing, displayed here really evokes an emotional response. For me, it has a great meaning, and it really touches my heart because I grew up in Rio Grande, and we used to come out here to the base all the time to visit friends, so I go back to those years. I really watch myself. I commend all of you for the painstaking effort you invested in restoring the F-4 to its original glory. This display will forever serve as a reminder of the men and women who fought for our freedom. Thank you for keeping the history of George alive in Victorville. Now I am pleased to recognize 4 volunteers who went above and beyond in the restoration of this aircraft. I should mention that each of these individuals were stationed here at George Air Force Base at some point in their careers. The first one that I will be calling up is David Byer, who served as a staff sergeant. He served as a staff sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. And I'll get you back. Let's hear it. The next one that I have is Senior Master Sergeant Robert Kincaid, United States Air Force, retired. Thank you so very much. Now we have Terry Weisflog, who served as a sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. Unfortunately, Terry is unable to be with us today. If Facebook is working correctly, we are streaming live, and you will see this video, Terry. Thank you, Dave. I understand you will accept Terry's award on his behalf. Yes, he is. So make sure you tell him that I said congratulations and thank you for everything that we also participated in. Okay? Yes, thank you so much. And now I have Senior Marcus, a product controller with the U.S. National Guard. Senior, thank you for your assistance with the restoration. So, thank you so much. Finally, I'd like to recognize our very devoted SCLA staff who invested their time and energies into restoring this F-4C. Thank you so much. You have done a great and beautiful job. all of us, all of our SCLA staff involved with the restoration, please stand so that we can actually applaud your efforts. Will you please stand? Thank you so much. And that is my presentation, and we will continue. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to ask these fine gentlemen to stay up here, and we're going to administer the certificates from the electeds. But I wanted to introduce you to these fine gentlemen that work on the team here at SCLA. Rick Falzone, raise your hand. Roger Christophos. And Daniel Uriardi. This project was a very small part of their actual job. They have very important responsibility out on that airfield, keeping it safe and secure. So they're involved largely with all aspects of airport operations. So a small part of their paid time was actually dedicated to helping with this aircraft, but amazingly these gentlemen led a team and volunteered a significant amount of time to deal with the physical aspect that involved everything from sanding the aircraft down from its old, mothballed, dirty, dingy colors to actually working with the other volunteers that we had that helped get smart about this aircraft, know what it was, everything into the details such as the decals, making sure that we were putting the right decals on the aircraft and that those decals actually represented what happened with that aircraft and what it was serving when it was here. So again, I'd like to thank them personally, and then at this time, we'll start by bringing up Dakota Higgins from Congressman Cook's office has a certificate to present.
Thank you. Sorry, it's beautiful today, but my hands are a little numb at this point. I'm Dakota Higgins. Congressman Cook wanted to be here. Unfortunately, he's held up in Washington, but he just wanted me to express his congratulations to the entire team and all the volunteers for their dedication and hard work in restoring this aircraft. It really means a lot, and he also wanted to pass along his hope that this will remind everyone of the blood, sweat, and tears that all of the aircraft maintainers, pilots, crew chiefs put into keeping these things operational in defense of our country. So with that, I have a few certificates. Congressman Cook yesterday on the floor entered into the congressional record just a brief summary of what's going to happen here today, and also his thanks to everyone involved. So I have one for the SCLA team. And then I also have one for each of the three volunteers. I understand Terry's not here, so we'll get that to him. But to David and Bob, if you guys want to come up, I have copies for you as well. Thank you very much.
Also a major supporter of this facility and representing this region as the Assembly member, J.O. Bernolti is in the audience. Would you please come up?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to be here this morning. Many of you know that I'm an aviation enthusiast, so this event has special meaning to me. I've been a pilot for 25 years, but not very many people know that that airplane is the reason why I had an interest kindled in aviation. When I was 6 years old, my father gave me a model of the F-4 Phantom for Christmas. It had like 1,000 pieces, and he and I together put it together with toothpicks and glue, and it gave me a whole appreciation for how complicated an airplane that is and the sophistication of the systems that are in it. It's a real honor for me to be here. I want to point out for just a moment how appropriate it is that this airplane is going to sit at the entrance to our airport here at Victorville. So that airplane was our frontline fighter bomber, and as it faded into obsolescence, that airframe was left to deteriorate, and now we have restored it, and it's a symbol of cooperation for our community. And very similarly, the ground that we're on, the former George Air Force Base, used to be a symbol of economic livelihood for our community. And when it was decommissioned, it was an incredible blow to our community. And lately, we have been revitalizing that airport. And if you look at the world-class companies that are here today, I'm talking about FedEx and GE and Boeing, I think that this airport and that aircraft are a symbol of what we can accomplish as a community if we work together. So it's a great honor for me to be able to help you commission this. And I have certificates of appreciation on behalf of the California State Legislature that I'd like to present. And this one is to the Southern California Logistics Airport team. I have one here for David Bauer. And Bob Kincaid. And we'll make sure that Terry gets his. But thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Supervisor Robert Lovingood is represented here today by Curtis Green.
It truly is an honor to be here today. Some of you know that Supervisor Lovingood was in the Air Force himself, and it's kind of bittersweet to me to be dedicating this aircraft today because, you know, I'm a helicopter man myself. I was in the Army, helicopter mechanic, so I guess next year we're going to have the unveiling of the Huey also. No, but just to let you know some of the work that had to go into this also. If you look at the tail number, it says 63 is the first number. That's the year this aircraft was first either ordered or made. So you know you can't just go to a Napa store around here and get parts for this thing. They did put a lot of work into this, and for that we are grateful. So on behalf of Supervisor Robert Lovingood, we'd like to recognize the SCLA F-4 restoration team. We commend and honor you for your volunteering your time and expertise in the restoration and preservation efforts of the F-4 supersonic jet at the Southern California Logistics Airport. Thank you for your unwavering dedication to this project. This one's for the team. Mr. David Bauer. Senior Master Sergeant Kincaid. And Terry, this is for you. Thank you.
And one last recognition, Senator Wilk is represented here today by Rebecca Tennyson.
You guys are warm.
Woo! Good morning, everyone. It really is brisk out here, so don't worry, I'll be very brief. It truly is an honor to be here today, and like everyone has said, just the reminder alone is going to be so beneficial to our community, and we're very thankful for all the work done. I have a certificate of recognition here on behalf of our brand new Senator Scott Wilk and the entire California State Senate, and it is to the City of Victorville Southern California Logistics Airport, Air Force Jet 4C, the F-4C Restoration Project completion. Congratulations and thank you to all the SCLA employees and volunteers who diligently preserved this historical Phantom fighter jet to be unveiled on this Pearl Harbor Day 2016. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. We do have a couple of invited speakers for you. The first is one of our volunteers, Mr. Bob Kincaid. Mr. Kincaid was an aircraft mechanic and production superintendent. He served a total of 26 years in the Air Force before retiring from George Air Force Base in 1992. He worked with the F-4 for 20 years. With that, I'd like to introduce you to Bob Kincaid for a few words.
As you heard, I'm an aircraft mechanic, not a public speaker. So if I stumble, forgive me. Somebody mentioned that the aircraft was it's not just an aircraft to us. People that worked on it, people that supported it. It's a way of life, and it was my way of life. I want to thank, well, first off, where's Manny Torres? Manny, the reason the aircraft looks the way it does cosmetically is because of your paint job. You did a heck of a job. I was told that's the first aircraft you've ever painted. I would have loved to see your face when they come up to you and say, do you want to paint an F-4? Of course, Dave Bauer, he was the heavy lifter in this, except for when I lifted the tires at my house to take them down the marks and get them filled up. We both worked as we could when we could. Sonia Marcus, she was here helping us, and she got called away for a much more important duty. She was deployed with the drones out of March Air Force Base, the MQ-9 Reaper drones. So what she was doing, serving her country, was very important, and we wish you could be here, but we understood. Terry Weisflug, he and I guess, were the first Facebookers, if you want to call us that saw a video of this aircraft sitting out in the desert, deteriorating. And we started making posts on different Facebook groups around, mainly dedicated with F-4s. There's a lot of them. And whether it was our urging or whether the airport management had the same idea at the same time, I don't know, but it ended up 2 years later, more than 2 years later, what you see in front of you. We're sending pictures of the aircraft being painted, and there were missing parts on the wingtips, and somehow or another he went down to the F-4 wingtip light store and got the parts we needed. Now there may be some displays in Florida where he lives that are missing wingtip lights, but I don't know. But we want to thank him for that. And he sent me a message today that he wants to thank the airport management, City of Victorville, everybody involved for letting him take part. He was a 3,000-mile away supporter. And a lot of our information to help us, me and Dave, do what we did came from posts on Facebook. Various groups, like I say, there's a number of F4 groups. One of the contacts I made over Facebook, Mike's son, lives in Ohio. He gave me contacts down at Holloman. And by the way, Holloman is still have several F4s that are still considered active duty. They're the only ones in the United States Air Force. 2 weeks from today, they end that mission. They're going to have a display and a retirement ceremony and a flyby on the 21st down at Holloman. And from then on, those airplanes will be scrapped, taken to bomb ranges and blown up as targets. Anyway, he gave us some contacts at Holloman. They said we could come down and get any parts we wanted. Anybody who knows Holloman, New Mexico, knows that's a heck of a place to get to. And we just couldn't do it. Most of the parts that are missing, and there are parts missing, for whatever reason, the 20 years that sat around unattended, are mostly not noticed unless you're an F4 mechanic and you get underneath there and start looking. Dave McHenry lives in New Mexico, gave me a contact of Chief Master Sergeant Dorman down in March Reserve Base. He's active duty, but he's stationed in March. I guess he's active duty overseer of some of the reserve maintenance that goes on down there. His tire shop was under his purview, and he talked to his tire people and said, yeah, we can help them get the tires on the rims, but they needed a tech order, a technical order on how to do it. I'm forbidden to give this name out, but within 5 minutes of me getting on Facebook asking anybody in the F4 community that if they had a tech order to do this, I got a message from this person and a screen capture that he took of the TO, where he got it in 5 minutes on the internet. I searched for months. I couldn't find it. But he helped as well. He's in the Southern California area. Richard Miller from Tennessee. He was stationed at a couple of bases that I was, Alconbury in England and here at George, not at the same times. But he happened to have got 3 years experience in the tire shop, and he responded to one of my posts requesting help on how do you take these F4 tires apart, or how to take the rims apart. A Facebook message, an email, and a phone call later, I went out to my garage. Yeah, my wife wasn't happy that they're out there. I went out to my garage, and 5 minutes later, I had the rims apart. It was that easy. Again, an unknown person in Tennessee helped me and helped this airplane get back together. We finally got everything together. The new tires, that's somebody else, Dave Bauer. He went to Frank's Tire Shop. I don't know where that's at. But several phone calls, he found a Frank's Tire Shop that had F4 tires for sale. And the airport footed the bill. They sent them to us, and we were able to do that project. That was the big holdup, and finally got the airplane over here. One last mention. The history of the Air Force Base was mentioned. Excuse me. The last operational outfit here was the 35th TAC Fighter Wing, or Fighter Wing. It was a tactical was taken out of the 35th Fighter Wing. And they deployed to Bahrain during Desert Storm, Desert Shield. The commander of that wing, Colonel Ron Clark, wanted to be here today, but he had surgery. He's laid up, couldn't be here, but he sent the message that he wanted me to read. I hope I can get through it. Says he wished he could be here. George and the F-4 will always be very special to him. George was his first assignment 50 years ago. He was a young second lieutenant, just learning to fly the F-4. Said it was truly fantastic to come back for my last operational assignment to George and the F-4 in 1990. However, the highlight of my career was to watch the men and women from George, both in Bahrain and at home, perform so magnificently, flying, maintaining, and supporting the F-4G while weasels during Desert Storm. He wants to thank everybody that was participated in the program and the rebuild, the refurbishing of this aircraft, to bring this old, proud F-4 warbird back to life for everyone, both young and old, can enjoy it again. Thanks. Colonel Ron Clark, U.S. Air Force retired, 35th TAC Fighter Wing Commander, 1990 and 1992. And I noticed that the flag was presented by some young high school people. I think it was Air Force ROTC. They're the ones that we hope to inspire by doing this. They're the future. We're the past. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. A true friend to the airport is a gentleman by the name of Rick Hatton, and I say that as he's, to me, one of the kindest people in the aviation industry I've met over the years. Rick is president and CEO of 10 Tanker Air Carrier. He served in the Marine Corps for 6 years. He was in the Navy ROTC program at Yale University. Upon graduation, he went through 18 months of flight school in order to get his wings in 1966. He flew 100 F-4 combat missions. He was a pilot and later on became an instructor for the F-4. He flew the Air Force version of the F-4, which is slightly different than the Marine Corps version. His last rank was captain. He left the Marines in 1969. Rick, would you come on up and give us a few words?
I'm honored to be asked to spend a little time here. Victorville SCLA is special to us at 10 Tanker because we developed the DC-10 here for aerial firefighting, and we miss the place a lot, having been here for about 10 years. I used to take a run after work from our offices over here down the flight line, and it's exactly 2 miles down to the F-4 and back. And I would do that 3 or 4 times a week, and in the summer it was pretty slow going, but I'd get down there and I'd be charged up again because this thing would be sitting there even though it was pretty much a bucket of bolts. And I remember telling Jim Worsham that if it had engines in it we could probably get her going and I might be able to fly it again, but it didn't have the engines. So anyway, it's just wonderful to be here. And Eric, Keith, thank you so much for asking me, and distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes talking about the airplane and its origins. Most of what you've heard, all of what you've heard is inspirational and accurate, although Keith was a bit of an airplane salesman when he was here a few minutes ago talking about it. If you do, I think it's great that it's 75th anniversary to the day of that horrible experience that we owe so much to those 2,400 people and the 405,000 people that died after that due to our entry into World War II on both continents. But President Roosevelt the next day gave a 6.5-minute speech. His advisors said he had to go longer, but he liked to go short. So I'll try to do the same. The airplane was originally developed by McDonnell for the Navy as an interceptor. And that goes all the way back, kind of coincidentally, to the Pearl Harbor thing, because at the time the Navy was a battleship Navy. Every Navy in the world was a battleship Navy prior to World War II. And the carrier, was kind of a new thing, same as the submarine was a new thing, and they weren't represented by the establishment in the Navy, so they didn't get quite the priority. But within 6 months of Pearl Harbor, the Battle of Coral Sea was the first battle where the ships that were fighting each other never shot at each other, because they were doing it via the aircraft aboard them. And that's historic, and that was only 6 months after Pearl Harbor. So the whole tenor of naval warfare was changing to the carrier. So now fast forward to the late 50s, early 60s, when the Navy in the Cold War decided they wanted to have an interceptor that could launch from the carrier, attain supersonic speed with missiles. Remember that, because it didn't have guns. And go up and intercept at a distance, maybe 15, 20 miles out, an incoming threat to that carrier, which was presumed to be a MiG from our friends in the Soviet Union. So that's how the airplane got developed. And it was just that, but it had so much capability that it morphed, if you will, into a fighter attack weapon, as called by the Navy and the Marine Corps, and a fighter bomber, as called by the Air Force. So it was a great machine, and it could do a lot of things. The salesman would say it could do Mach 2, it could fly for 2,000 miles, and it could carry 12 to 15,000 pounds of ordnance or bombs. The truth is, it could do any one of those, but it couldn't do any two of them at the same time. So like all airplane salesmen, Keith, you give them the numbers and you play with them as you will. Just a few more minutes, if you'll bear with me. I'd love to just talk about this machine. I really congratulate the fellows that put it together and brought it out of the sand, because it was tearful to see it the way it was a few years ago and had been for many years. The C model, different from the one I flew, was a B model and a J model. The main difference with the Navy Marine Corps was it had a resting hook on the tail end, and it was a massive piece of gear, because you were trying to stop that thing with the wires aboard ship, and that takes a lot of tensile strength, if you will. So I think the tail hook alone weighed about 1,100 pounds. But the C model was essentially the same as the B. The Air Force flew it with 2 pilots. The Navy Marine Corps flew it with a pilot in the front and a radar officer in the back. Both services called the guy in the back the GIB, G-I-B, the guy in the back. And there were all kinds of stories about that. That was the nice name, yeah. Bob knows some others, I'm sure. There's 3 things that are considered useless in aviation. One is altitude above you, the other is runway behind you, and the last but not least is the guy in the back. So anyway, it had a great capability, as most of what I flew it was air to ground or in an attack mission. So we were always hanging stuff on it, which caused it not to be as supersonic. If it were flying in this configuration, you notice it has wing tanks on it. Those had about 2,500 pounds of fuel each, one on each side. You could also have a 4,000-pound center tank on it. But if you put all three on it, it was really a dog because of the drag. With just the wing tanks, it was limited to 1.6, and you had to really work to get there. The thing was really slick when you had nothing on it, and the missiles were half embedded in the fuselage, the Sparrow missiles. And then I'm working from about a 48-year memory here, so it's coming back fairly well. And it also had the ability to carry sidewinders. So in the air-to-air mission against another airplane, it would attack from the front first, and then if that failed, you'd have a re-attack from the rear with the heat-seeking sidewinder missile. Of course, in Vietnam, we had rules of engagement that precluded doing that. So then the big news was you get in close with an aerial combat situation, you really wanted to have a gun, which it didn't have. The C model never had a gun. The Navy Marine Corps models never had a gun. Finally, the Air Force got smart with the E model and put a gun in it. And then it became a true fighter again. But meanwhile, it was used much more so in Vietnam as an air-to-ground weapon to support ground operations. And it was very effective in that regard. Could carry about 12,000 pounds of bombs, or it could carry 12 500-pound. It could carry 12 of almost anything, and because it was limited by the number of places to hitch it on the airplane. And there were variations of those bombs. It carried napalm, which was a kind of a fun delivery, low level. And we fight fires now, and we do the same thing, but for a better reason, let's say. Anyway, I'd love to spend hours talking about it, as I'm sure you would like me not to do. So thank you very much for your attendance, and I congratulate again SCLA and all the great people that have helped us over the years, and especially Keith and Eric. Thank you very much.
So in closing, if you've heard the rumor that the real reason we put this model up is to make it easier for the public to find the airport office, that is not true. We actually put it here to create a strong remembrance of the history of George Air Force Base. But George Air Force Base, as we know, has been closed for 25 years. And just as there's been a huge collaboration of effort, including volunteerism, to put this monument here before you, the last 25 years has been somewhat symbolic of a cooperative effort, collaborative effort, not only among the community, but among the businesses to try to transform this facility into the ideal business and logistics park. And we have done so with the help of many, including our development partner Sterling, who's been largely helpful over the last 20 years almost in redeveloping some of these facilities. A lot of the new vertical buildings, much more modern ones that you see around here, are resultant from that partnership. There's been about 3 million square feet of industrial space built since 1997 when Victorville really took charge and leadership role of transforming this facility. Certainly back then, I believe they had envisioned it being a 30-year project. I can tell you today, I still believe it's a 30-year project, but we're certainly hopeful that the next 30 years, when we're sitting here again, we're looking back and being proud of not only the history that was when it was George Air Force Base, but the history and the effort it took to transform this and meet the goals of transforming this for true public and private use. So with that, thank you for your attendance today. Be safe and happy holidays.
Thank you.
retired from the Air Force here at Georgia Air Force Base back in '92. My last deployment was, as you can tell by the hat, was Desert Storm. I was with the Wild Weasels out of the 561st Attack Fighter Squadron. This particular aircraft here, the F-4C model, was one of my very first aircraft that I worked on at stationed at Luke Air Force Base. And from Luke Air Force Base, I went to Vietnam and actually into Thailand and worked the F-4D models. The Air Force had 4 different model aircraft: the C model, D model, the E model, and the G model. The G model being the Wild Weasel. And but there was a lot of history behind these aircraft. They, took a beating and just kept on rolling. And I had the good fortune of working these airplanes, even though they broke your back, because these aircraft are very hefty, and they had a mission to do. And like I said, I had my aircraft down in Thailand. Took a couple of anti-aircraft rounds through the center line of the aircraft itself, and there's a lot of extensive maintenance to do in there. But this old bird could really take a beating, and it was around in the Air Force inventory for a long time. Like retired Senior Master Sergeant Kincaid said at Holloman Air Force Base, we have just a couple of F-4s still flying over there, but they'll be soon retired. And but it was my great pleasure to work on these F-4s and serving our country from Vietnam to Desert Storm. And I've lived here in the city of Victorville for over 25 years now. And George Air Force Base, I did 2 tour duties here at George. And this is home to me too. I mean, being a military man, my kids grew up here, and so we have very special place in our heart for George Air Force Base. No, it's just it was a great honor. It just swells my heart with pride because the Air Force has been my career, and our son is getting ready to retire from the Air Force after 21 years of service. And he, of course, did different stuff. He was tactical air control party. He's had about 5 combat tours over in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he's getting ready to retire here the 1st of March of this coming year. So I told him, yeah, it's about time, just relax and go into the civilian world and start your second career. But this aircraft and this base here means a lot to me because it was a jumping point for all of our pilots going over to Vietnam. This our training wing was gearing up our pilots when they headed off to Nam. And I had the great pleasure of serving in Thailand during that war, and especially towards the end of the war, we had a campaign to fly bombing raids up to Hanoi and Haiphong in December of '72, and we called it the 12 Days of Christmas because that's how long the bombing operation lasted. So I was glad to be part of that operation, and again heading out to Bahrain and the first Gulf War. We came back from the Gulf War in '91 and retired the aircraft, and we kept 1 squadron on active duty, and that was up at Nellis Air Force Base in Idaho, Hill Air Force Base in Idaho. So they finally retired the F-4s and back in '95. So yeah, this aircraft really means a lot to me, and I spent 14 of my 22 years working on these particular F-4 Phantoms.
Comes directly from Vietnam to here, and I actually worked on this particular aircraft at the time, and then I went to TDY from here to Thailand with the group in Holloman, and we brought these over there, and then I came back here for another 1.5 years. I was here with the 35th. I was actually here when they adopted the symbol that's up on the intake of this aircraft. I was here when they put out we got a notice that was wanting to figure out what type of symbol to represent the 35th. So they decided that's what they wanted. And it was kind of funny because I was having trouble with one of my friends, and he was going with, kind of badmouthed me to the uppers. And I saw that knife there holding up like that, and I said, hey, the backstabbers. because we had a few of them in the 35th. But I got out in 73, so I wasn't with it. But somebody, I was on Facebook, and he was telling me that the 35th did not send aircraft to Desert Storm. And I said, you're wrong. They did send aircraft to Desert Storm, because I remembered it was their last TDY. They made a big deal of it. They sent aircraft and mechanics and pilots all over there with them.
So what was your outlook on the whole unveiling today? What did it mean?
I think it was beautiful. You did a real good job, and they did a fantastic job on this aircraft. I can't believe it, because I did see it when it was down here, and it was, like the man said, it was kind of deteriorating.
You have a lot of history with these type of...
Actually, yes. The 4453rd was formed at McDonnell Air Force Base in Florida. I was in the 15th TAC Fighter Wing at the time, and I heard they was coming in, so I talked to my Master Sergeant. I said, I gotta go to that 53rd when they get going. And he said, okay, we'll see what we can do. So they we got about 20 some odd B models from the Navy to start transitioning for the C model. And one thing that really reminds me of it, I remember when we got the first C model in, it was escorted in with one of the old T-33 trainer aircraft. And the Phantom was flying here, had his gear down, hooked down, flaps and all. And he was just sitting there just steady as a rock, cruising along. And the old T-Bird sitting there rocking back and forth. It was about ready to fall out of the sky. It just couldn't handle the slow speed that this one here could actually fly. Get your camera right here. You can see this little piece right here on the end of the stab. Yeah. These are called stabilators, by the way. If a pilot hit one of these on takeoff, dropped the tail down too far, if they hit this, it had to be changed. The stab had to be checked for cracks and everything. And it was a little job getting all these stuff off the end of this tip. So the crew chief, he had to do it. Okay. The pilot paid him a case of beer. If he threw up in the cockpit on a flight, he cleaned it out. The ground crew did. We didn't mess with the stuff like that.
I'm Eric Ray, the airport director here at the SCLA. We had our event today, F-4 unveiling ceremony with a really nice turnout. We had over 200 people that showed up, a lot of local veterans, and was really impressed with the amount of spirit and the amount of people that really had a significant interest in what was going on. We had some veterans that spoke that served here, worked on the aircraft, as well as a pilot that actually flew the aircraft in combat. So we're very pleased with today's turnout. We're very pleased with the acceptance that the community has had with the airport, as well as the historic artifacts such as it's F-4.
And Eric, what would you let the public know about, those that are maybe thinking about coming out and seeing the aircraft in person?
It's available right here on Phantom West, out in the open. We welcome anyone to come out and look at it at any time.